Westminster is awash with rumours tonight of a possible challenge to Sir Keir Starmer's leadership. Robert's sources have been telling him that plotters are out to get the Prime Minister and his Chancellor Rachel Reeves. So strong are the rumours that the Health Secretary Wes Streeting's spokesperson has put out a statement saying any claims that he's involved are completely untrue. In the life of a Prime Minister, and in particularly a Chancellor, there's never a good time for such rumours, but 2 weeks before a budget is worse than most, because of the potential impact, of course, on the bond prices and on the cost of government borrowing. Well, Robert.
Picture this. You finally managed to secure the keys to number 10. You've unpacked your bags, picked out a nice new rug, and you're just settling in for a quiet afternoon of managerial competence. Then, you look out the window and realize the entire neighborhood is sharpening their pitchforks. And these aren't just any neighbors. These are the people who paid for your house, mowed your lawn, and literally put the labor in the Labour Party. Sir Keir Starmer, a man whose primary political aesthetic is sensible person in a storm, is currently finding out that the storm isn't coming from the opposition. It's coming from inside the House. We aren't just talking about a bit of midterm grumbling or a few spicy tweets from the back benches. We are talking about a full-blown, coordinated, get your coat, you've had your time, plot to force the Prime Minister's resignation. The unions are revolting, Donald Trump is shouting from across the pond, and the local elections in May have suddenly become a political guillotine. It is absolute, unadulterated chaos, and today we are stripping back the curtains to see exactly how the walls are closing in on Sir Keir. Quick favor, if you're loving this, hit that subscribe button. Over 92% of viewers haven't yet. It's free, takes a second, and means the world to us. Thanks if you did. Now back to the show.
So I think I've got to slightly clarify what the position is. I mean, look, Keir Starmer, not a very popular Prime Minister. We've got a budget coming out that most people know is going to put up taxes to a very large extent and again may well prove to be pretty unpopular. And then we've got what many regard as the make or break moment for Keir Starmer personally, which is the May elections, which right now look as though they're going to go very badly for Labour.
The British political landscape is currently resembling a game of Jenga, where someone has greased the blocks and replaced the table with a trampoline. At the center of it all is Sir Keir Starmer, looking increasingly like a man trying to read a map while his car is spinning off the M1. The big news that has sent shockwaves through Westminster is the emergence of a genuine, calculated plot by union bosses to remove him from office if things don't improve. And fast. Steve Wright, the General Secretary of the Fire Brigades Union, has stepped out of the shadows to deliver what can only be described as a political ultimatum. He didn't just whisper this in a dark corridor. He made it clear that the patience of the people who fund and fuel the Labour Party has run dry. The warning is stark. End the chaos, stop the perpetual U-turns, and deliver meaningful change before the May local elections. Or face the sack. This is not a drill. This is the foundation of the Labour Party threatening to pull itself out from under the leader's feet. When the General Secretary of an affiliated union starts talking about last chances, you know the tea has gone cold and the biscuits are soggy. Wright's sentiment is a brutal reflection of the mood across the trade union movement. They aren't just annoyed. They are embarrassed. They feel that the government is drifting, caught in a cycle of hesitation and managerialism that fails to address the burning issues of the day. The phrase, "I don't really care who does it," is perhaps the most damaging thing a loyalist could say. It strips away the personal authority of the Prime Minister. It suggests that Keir Starmer is merely a placeholder, an interchangeable cog in a machine that is currently failing to produce anything of value. If the unions, who are the lifeblood of the party's ground game and bank balance, are ready to force him to quit, then the Prime Minister is effectively on death row with a May execution date.
On to our politicians then. Sir Keir Starmer's premiership, they're saying, could be under threat, as Labour MPs are themselves reportedly plotting against his leadership.
This all comes despite the Prime Minister's recent efforts to engage more with his colleagues behind closed doors.
And of course then elsewhere you've got the Chancellor, who's set to announce a stealth tax raid on retirement savings in her budget.
Experts warn it could reduce the size of pension pots and cut net income.
The logic is simple. If Labour suffers massive defeats in the local elections, the unions will claim that Starmer is an electoral liability who cannot win over the very people he claims to represent. They see the red wall not just cracking, but being demolished by a lack of clear vision. And while Starmer is trying to put out these fires at home, he's managed to spark a massive international incident by hopping on a plane to China. Enter Donald Trump. The U.S. president has never been one for diplomatic niceties, but his latest intervention is a sledgehammer to Starmer's attempts at global statesmanship. as Starmer touched down in Shanghai, hoping to foster a more sophisticated relationship with President Xi Jinping. Trump was on the airwaves branding the move as dangerous. It is a classic Trumpian broadside, but it carries immense weight. The president warned that the UK should not look to China for answers, effectively telling Starmer that if he wants to play in the big leagues of the Western Alliance, he needs to pick a side. This creates a massive headache for number 10. They are trying to position the UK as a pragmatic global player, but Trump is making it clear that pragmatism looks a lot like betrayal from the perspective of the White House. The irony of Starmer trying to build sophisticated ties while his own backyard is on fire is not lost on anyone. It's like trying to negotiate a corporate merger while your kitchen is flooding and your spouse is packing their bags. Trump even took a swipe at Canada, showing that he's in no mood for anyone in the North Atlantic to be making eyes at Beijing. This international pressure feeds directly into the narrative of the domestic plotters. They see a prime minister who is out of his depth, chasing shadows in China, while the British public is struggling with the cost of living and a sense of national decline. The optics are terrible. A prime minister shaking hands with Xi Jinping, while union bosses are back home drafting his resignation letter. Speaking of people back home, we have to talk about the King of the North, Andy Burnham. The war of words between the Labour leadership and the Greater Manchester mayor is no longer a subplot, it is a main feature. Burnham has become the avatar for everyone in the party who feels that Starmer is too London-centric, too cautious, and too disconnected from the reality of working-class life. Every time Burnham speaks, it highlights the vacuum of charisma and conviction at the top of the party. The unions are watching this internal bickering with growing alarm. Steve Wright pointed out that these own goals are making the party look weak, and who benefits from a weak Labour Party? According to the union bosses, it isn't the Tories, it's Reform UK. Nigel Farage is the ghost that haunts the dreams of every Labour strategist. The unions fear that while Starmer is busy being sophisticated and managerial, Farage is on the ground, speaking a language people actually understand. Wright openly questioned if Starmer is even the right person to fight off the reform threat. That is a devastating critique. It suggests that the leader of the Labour Party is incapable of defending his own heartlands against a populist surge from the right. The plot, therefore, is born out of a sense of existential dread. The unions aren't just being difficult. They are trying to save the party from what they see as an inevitable collapse under Starmer's leadership. They see a leader who is allergic to bold decisions, a man who treats every policy like a legal contract that needs to be scrutinized for risks, rather than a vision to inspire the nation. This safety-first approach is, in the eyes of the FBU and others, the most dangerous path of all. It leaves a vacuum that Farage is more than happy to fill with a pint in one hand and a Union Jack in the other. The suspense is building toward May. If the results are poor, the plan is already in motion. The affiliated unions would move in unison to demand a change. This wouldn't just be a suggestion, it would be an ultimatum backed by the threat of withdrawing funding and support. Without the unions, Starmer is a king without an army. He would be forced to rely on his MPs, many of whom are already twitchy and looking at the polling data with the kind of expression usually reserved for a horror movie jump scare. The pressure would be immense, and the calls for his resignation would become a deafening roar. Let's dive deeper into the China situation, because it's a perfect example of why the sophisticated approach is failing. Starmer wants a more sophisticated relationship, which in diplomatic speak means we want your money, but we'll occasionally mention human rights in a footnote. However, the world has changed. The era of the golden age under Cameron and Osborne is long dead. By trying to revive it, Starmer looks like he's living in 2015. Trump's warning that it's dangerous isn't just about trade. It's about the soul of the UK's foreign policy. If the UK aligns too closely with China, it risks being frozen out of the US-UK special relationship, which is already looking a bit lukewarm. This international fumble gives his domestic enemies more ammunition.
I mean, this is incredible. The fact that he won such a sizable majority, albeit being that loveless landslide with quite wide support but quite shallow. The fact that that was just last summer, and yet now he has so little authority, not just in the country, which we already see in the opinion polls. He's the most unpopular serving Prime Minister since the pollsters bothered to ask the question. But also he's incapable of projecting any authority within his own party. As you rightly say, Anne, many of these MPs, newbie MPs, they used to be referred to and nicknamed the Stormtroopers, selected precisely for their loyalty because of the fact that they were seen as bought into this project of making Labour more quote-unquote centrist and electable again. And yet these seem to be the very people who are getting a bit restless. These are people who are in Parliament for the first time, don't want it to be the only time that they'll be there. And so, quite understandably, are wondering if the man at the top is the problem.
They can argue that Starmer is failing on the world stage just as badly as he is at home. The Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney also got a lashing from Trump for his January trip to China. which just goes to show that the US president is keeping a very close eye on his neighbors and allies. When Trump says Canada is doing poorly and warns of a 100% tariff, the UK should be shivering in its boots. Starmer's trip to Shanghai starts to look less like a masterstroke of diplomacy and more like a desperate gamble for investment that might end up costing the UK its most important alliance. Back in the UK, the plotters are counting down the days. Steve Wright's comments were a flare sent up to signal to other union leaders that it's time to prepare. The idea of a last chance is a powerful narrative tool. It sets a deadline. It tells the public and the party that the current situation is temporary. It turns Starmer into a lame duck prime minister before he's even had a chance to get his feet under the table. The chaos Wright mentions refers to the constant shifting of positions, the U-turns on green investment, the hesitation on workers' rights, and the general feeling that the government is afraid of its own shadow. For a party called Labour, failing to secure the full-throated support of the labor movement is a bit like a bakery running out of flour. You can stay open for a bit, but eventually everyone's going to notice there's no bread. The analogy of the own goals is particularly apt. Think of it like a football match where the captain is so worried about the other team scoring that he keeps passing the ball back to his own keeper, only to trip over the ball and watch it roll into the net. Every time the government hesitates or backtracks, it hands a win to the opposition and, more importantly, to Reform UK. The unions see this clearly. They know that their members are the ones who will suffer if the government fails to deliver, and they are not prepared to go down with the ship. The mention of Nigel Farage is the real boogeyman in this scenario. Farage thrives on the perception that the political elite are out of touch, and Starmer, with his barrister background and careful phrasing, is the perfect foil for Farage's Man of the People act. If the unions feel that Starmer can't fight that battle, they will find someone who can. Maybe someone like Andy Burnham, who has been carefully cultivating an image as the voice of the ignored North. The tension between the London leadership and the regional mayors is a classic British drama, but it's one that could end in a tragic finale for Sir Keir. The plot isn't just about policy, it's about personality. It's about a fundamental disagreement over what the Labour Party should be. Is it a party of cautious management or a party of bold change? Starmer has tried to be the former, believing that the public wants grown-ups in the room. But the unions are pointing out that if the grown-ups are just sitting in the room doing nothing while the house burns down, people are going to start looking for someone with a fire extinguisher, even if that person is a bit loud and obnoxious. The suspense of the May elections cannot be overstated. It is the finish line of a race that Starmer didn't realize he was running against his own side. Every door knocked on and every leaflet delivered between now and then is a heartbeat in the countdown to his potential political demise. The unions are ready. The plot is laid out. The warnings have been issued, and while Starmer is in China trying to find a sophisticated answer to the UK's economic woes, the answer might actually be coming from a fire brigade general secretary in a small office in London. Your time is up. The collapse of the Starmer project would be a monumental event in British politics. It would signal the end of the New Labour experiment and plunge the party into a leadership crisis, just as the country is looking for stability. But for the plotters, a crisis now is better than a slow death over the next few years. They want a government that delivers, and they have decided that if the current prime minister can't do it, they will find someone who can. It's a bold, high-stakes game of political poker, and Steve Wright just went all in. Starmer is left looking at his hand, wondering if he has enough to stay in the game, or if he's about to lose everything. The international dimension, with Trump's shadow looming large, only adds to the sense of a world closing in. The UK is caught between a hostile US president and a wary China, while at home, its government is being eaten from within by the very organizations that created it. It's a Shakespearean level of drama, with Starmer as the tragic hero who might have been too sensible for his own good. As we approach May, the energy in Westminster is electric with anticipation. The whispers in the corridors have become shouts in the media. The plot to force Keir Starmer's resignation isn't just a rumor anymore. It's the defining story of the current British political era. Whether he can pivot, stop the U-turns, and win back the trust of the unions is the ultimate question. But with the likes of Trump, Farage, and Burnham all pushing from different sides, the walls are looking very thin indeed. The collapse isn't just about a single policy or a single mistake. It's the cumulative weight of a leadership that has failed to ignite the imagination of its own base. The fire is spreading, and the man whose job it is to lead the fire brigade is the one holding the match. It's a surreal high-energy moment in history where the future of the UK's leadership hangs by a thread, and that thread is being pulled by a coalition of union bosses, international giants, and disgruntled regional mayors. The sheer audacity of the unions to set a deadline for a sitting prime minister is a testament to how far his authority has fallen. Usually, a PM gets a honeymoon period, but for Starmer, it seems the marriage, was over before the cake was even cut. The last chance warning is a haunting refrain that will follow him every time he stands at a podium or answers a question at PMQs. Every word he speaks will be judged against the backdrop of this plot. Is he delivering? Is he stopping the chaos? Or is he just another manager waiting for his contract to be terminated? The drama of British politics has never been more intense, more witty, or more dangerously unpredictable. As the world watches Starmer in China, the real action is happening in the committee rooms and union halls of Great Britain. The plot is thickening, the stakes are rising, and the end might be closer than anyone imagined. It is a masterful display of political maneuvering, a cold-blooded assessment of power, and a reminder that in the Labour Party, the leader is only as strong as the unions allow him to be. And right now, the unions are saying he's looking very weak indeed. The countdown to May has begun, and the political world is holding its breath to see if Sir Keir Starmer can survive the most significant challenge of his career, or if the plot to remove him will result in one of the most dramatic collapses in modern political history. The weight of expectation is a heavy burden, and Starmer is finding out that it's not just about winning an election, it's about keeping the people who want it for you on your side. Without them, he is just a man in a suit, standing on a stage, waiting for the curtain to fall. The narrative of the sensible manager is being replaced by the narrative of the doomed leader, and in the fast-paced world of politics, that is a transition that is almost impossible to reverse. The energy is high, the wit is sharp, and the insights are clear. Keir Starmer is in the fight of his life, and the people he thought were his allies are the ones leading the charge against him. It's a gripping, suspenseful, and ultimately brutal look at the reality of power in the UK today. As the plot unfolds, every move Starmer makes will be scrutinized for signs of weakness or strength. Can he stare down the unions? Can he ignore Trump's warnings? Can he silence Burnham? The odds are stacking up against him, and the political clock is ticking louder than ever.
Keir Starmer's had a tough year and a bit as Prime Minister. His approval ratings have cratered, borrowing costs have surged, and the most recent poll we could find put Labour in joint third, on a par with the Tories, 16 points behind Reform and a point behind the Greens. Nonetheless, there's long been a sense that, for all his shortcomings, Starmer isn't going anywhere. After all, he's still got a stonking majority in the Commons, and is just the fourth Labour leader in British political history to actually win an election. Unfortunately for Starmer, that's apparently changed, and Labour MPs have been telling Westminster journos that the situation has become terminal.
The collapse of a prime minister is rarely a single event. It's a series of small fractures that eventually lead to a total break. We are seeing those fractures appear in real time, and the sound of the cracking is getting louder every day. From the union halls to the streets of Shanghai, the message is clear. The status quo is no longer an option. The plot to force Starmer's resignation is the ultimate expression of that reality. It is a bold, high-stakes move that could change the face of British politics forever. And as we watch the drama play out, we can't help but wonder who will be left standing when the dust finally settles. The Labour Party is at a crossroads, and the direction it takes will be determined by whether its leader can survive the storm he's currently caught in. It's a story of power, betrayal, and the relentless pursuit of results in a world that doesn't have time for hesitation. The plot is the point, the May elections are the trigger, and Keir Starmer is the man in the crosshairs. It's UK politics at its most unfiltered, its most chaotic, and its most compelling. The plot to remove a prime minister is the ultimate political thriller, and we are all in the front row. The unions have laid out their terms, Trump has fired his warning shot, and the clock is ticking toward a May showdown that will decide the fate of the Labour leadership. It's a high-octane journey through the heart of Westminster power, where loyalty is a luxury and results are the only currency that matters. As Starmer navigates the treacherous waters of international diplomacy and domestic revolt, he must realize that the sophisticated approach might just be the very thing that leads to his downfall. The world wants bold action, the unions want delivery, and the public wants a leader who knows where he's going. If Starmer can't provide that, the plotters are more than ready to find someone who can. The suspense is at a breaking point, the energy is undeniable, and the conclusion of this political drama is just around the corner. Thank you for watching.